The regular session of the Madison County Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, February 12th, 2019 is now called to order. Ms. Bates, would you mind doing the invocation for the day?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the days that you give us and the life that you allow us to lead. And thank you for the opportunity to serve our communities. And I pray that you would help us keep our focus on you and on the joy that it brings to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, I recommend approval of the agenda for February 12, 2019.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for recommendation for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, February 12th, 2019. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we'll have a couple quick updates for you, if that's all right. Tomorrow morning is the State of the Schools that the School Foundation puts on it's targeted generally to our business community. And the breakfast buffet opens at 7 and the program starts at 7:30. So if you guys are able to come, I didn't know if any of y'all are planning on being there, but love seeing y'all there to come. So
Looking forward
look
to it.
that. It would also be Robbie Parker and Chrissy Finley. We'll be part of there. We'll have a panel discussion and get to start some good conversations. So appreciate the support for that. Next Wednesday, is that right, Tim? The e-learning day? Is that third? Wednesday. Next Wednesday will be an e-learning day. We're giving the testing for juniors in our high schools. That's our accountability testing. The reason we're doing an e-learning day for the pressure of kind of having a testing area, of closing off part of the schools and having proctors, and also accommodations for individuals, whether it's extended time or special circumstances. There has to be a one-on-one proctor for those. And so this is something that all the high school principals requested, and hopefully we think with this we'll have smaller rooms, kind of teacher to proctor ratio there, smaller students per room, and can really get a good testing environment and to optimize that testing experience for kids. So that's going to be next Wednesday. And also want to celebrate Miss Benita Moyer. I got the invite and the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and participate as her guest. She was recognized by the National Education Association as the Alabama Award winner and up for a national award in D.C. And so we're very proud of her and all the success and programs and ingenuity that she's brought to our district. So congratulations, Ms. Moyer. All right, and on the agenda today, we've got the administrative items that we're going to get to first, and then discussion items after that. All right, so we'll start off with a recommendation for the board to award the bid to New Hope Elementary and Middle School roof to Standard Roofing for a total cost of $1,254,569.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the recommendation to the board to award the bid for the New Hope Elementary School roof to Standard Roofing for a total cost of $1,254,569. Is there any discussion?
Have we worked with this company before?
That was quick.
They're currently doing all this Crossroads School. So they do about 50% of our work. They do a good job.
Is this like the entire roof, or is this part of the roof?
This is about 80% of the entire building. There's sections of it that we repainted, and there's 2 or 3 sections that were done about 10 years ago that are still in good condition. But it's about 80% of it.
Okay. And it's all we intend to do in the near future?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
we're good for another 15, 20, 25 years.
This will correct the problem that we saw in the pictures where the water was puddling on the top and all of that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor of accepting the bid as proposed, say aye. Aye.
And just a little inside baseball in there. Congrats to Kerry and his work on that. You know, this was a project we had lined up to bid in the fall, but there was a lot of projects going on. We kind of discussed it, and even hearing back from some of the workers that they were so busy, the prices were going to be high. And so we took a aiming date of February, and we actually, the bid was going to be a week ago, and there were still, some of the companies said, hey, we can jump in there, we just need a little bit more time. So honestly, congrats to Kerry and his team for just kind of working with that and getting us a good price to come in under budget on that. All right, I recommend approval or revision to Madison County Policy 5.9.4 for on-the-job injury leave.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for recommendation of approval of revisions to the Madison County Board of Education Policy 5.9.4 on the job injury leave. Any discussion?
Can you just kind of summarize what the change means?
Yes, ma'am. If you'll notice that, we took out the yellow section and the light blue sections, and basically the summary is we're taking out in policy where it says this form, this form, this form, this form, and putting it as established procedure, so as the forms change and the documents change, we don't keep bringing it back to the board. Also, in short summary, this will allow the superintendent to go ahead and approve the leave so that people can stay for policy. They can provide state law, they can stay on leave for 90 days and be covered under their salary. And this allows the superintendent to act as executive of the board to go ahead and approve those, so they don't have to keep coming to you after just for being rubber stamped, for you just to basically see them. And so that's the second section, which is the section that Ms. Thompson helped get approved or reviewed and made sure that it was in compliance with the law.
So we won't see these on the personnel.
See these on the agenda anymore. So as long as they meet the requirement by state law as far as a job-related injury, they're entitled to that 90-day window, and then they also would go through the Board of Adjustments for any out-of-pocket expenses, and then the district would help them in filing the paperwork, but that's separate from the board completely. That's up to the state and the Board of Adjustments. It has nothing to do with the board.
Is there any additional discussion?
We would still be consistent, though, with the 90 days, right? That would be all the superintendent could grant, would be 90 days.
That's set by the state law.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the recommendation for revisions to the Madison County Board of Education Policy 5.9.4 on the job injury leave, say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the following contracts for services as attached.
Motion.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second for recommendation approval for the contract of services as attached. Any discussion? If there's no additional discussion, all those in favor of approving the contract of services as attached, say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the following personnel items and the addendum as submitted. In the addendum, I do want to especially point out the supervisor of student services to include Keith Trewick.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for recommendation of approval of the following personnel items and addendum as submitted. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor of approving the personnel actions and addendum as attached, say aye.
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 And with that, I would say congratulations to Principal Trewick. He's not here, but we look forward to joining our team, and it was a pretty rigorous process there, and I know he's been one of our veteran principals.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll miss him at Legacy, but all the best going forward.
It's got them in good shape, for sure. Okay, that's all the administrative items. President Weiss, there are some informational items that we can move to. We got some different folks presenting on that. First up will be a discussion of our networking equipment and a lease. This is Ms. Wilson's coming up. Ms. Thompson's been negotiating with HP, and so hope to bring this to you guys at the next meeting for approval.
Yes, what we've been doing, Ms. O'Bannon and Ms. Thompson and myself have been working with HP for about 2 months on this project. What we're trying to do is upgrade all of our switches, and y'all know we do not have access points in every classroom. We're trying to correct that issue and have an access point in every classroom. And basically what it is, it's for a lease up to approximately $800,000. We'll buy the equipment. When the equipment gets here and we set it up, then that lease payment will start. It'll be over 3 years with 0% interest. And the proper terminology Ms. O'Bannon wanted me to use was, we've talked about the financial responsibilities and my budget will cover that. So what it's gonna do, it's gonna let us get everything updated at once instead of piecemealing it together. Like the switch that feeds this whole facility is sitting across the room, across the hall there, and it's 11 years old. So some of our equipment is ancient, and this would be one opportunity for us to all get on the same page as the district. Questions?
Does this include installation of the equipment or?
We're gonna do the installation ourselves to save money.
Okay.
All this will be buying switches, access points, and some power supplies for the modules.
When you say access point, what does that mean?
It's the connection right here that allows mobile devices to connect to the internet.
Okay.
White piece.
So you can go into some of our classrooms, and if you carried your Chromebook, it would not connect. So we're going to eliminate that K through 12. So connection should be solid. Our first go-around, which will be solid in every inch of the school.
Is that essentially a router in what would be our homes, Mark?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, yeah. The access points allows us to get on the internet and also on our network.
Those classes just, what do they do right now?
They try, if you sit like close to the wall, you can get some from the room, on this side of the building, on this side of the wall. If you sit up the front of the room, sometimes you can grab their signal from the other classroom.
Some of our schools have a higher density of these, and some you'll put them in a hallway right between the two classrooms
Right.
and try to get them to both. And that's where we have our problem.
So this is like a lease purchase? So,
Yeah, we'll own all the equipment. It's a full warranty on the equipment. So once we buy it, we can send it back for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, ever how long we need to do it.
And what about repair? I mean, if there's something that needs to be repaired?
What happens on that, say we designate that this switch is bad, we send it into HP, they FedEx us one the next day, and basically within a day, it's swapped out.
what's your timeline of getting all this installed and in place?
As fast as we can go.
So is this the reason, like, with our phones, we can't get on the school network?
That's a lot of it, yes, ma'am. That's a lot of it.
It says my password's no good.
Well, I don't know if I can fix the password issue with this go-around, but yeah, we can fix the password.
It works here, it just doesn't work in the school.
Right. And this will give us mobile calling in the schools, which that's one thing we haven't had for a lot of the schools. You get deep in the schools and your cell phone won't work. Well, now what it'll do, if you're logged into the network, it'll flip over to that, and then you can make your calls. So that's going to be beneficial for a safety standpoint as well.
Yes, and I wanted to say thank you as well. Not just our phones, phones are a really cool thing in technology, but a lot of our students now depend on their phones in order for them to alarm for their blood sugar. And if they're in an area that doesn't catch up, then they don't know until they maybe get to the next class that they needed treatment. And that's not the only type of alarms that those phones are used for, but many of our students and teachers now use their phones for life-saving devices as well.
Yes, ma'am.
That's something that I don't think schools design their networks to
No.
to be a trigger of, to be the,
No, I don't think it was.
so-
And I understand why we didn't, but that's where technology
we
has
are.
gone with being able to help people be able to take better care of themselves. And so
Right.
I appreciate that we're going to be able to keep some of our kids safer from their own bodies.
And currently, we have over 32,000 devices attached to our network, which is staggering.
So, Mr. Wilson, I know you said as quickly as you can, but kind of got
Well, we hope to have it all in place by August.
August? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we want to be fully operational first day of school. And we're training up some of our people right now to hurry up this process. What we're doing in this style, we're cleaning up all of our closets. They're all nice and neat, 6-inch jumpers, trying to do everything best practices.
Well, that was my next question. So your staff, they're equipped to be able to
Right.
figure these, manage them and all that good stuff?
Actually, what's so good about these, I shouldn't get into all this, I'm sorry, y'all. What it'll do, these, all you have to do is plug them up, they phone home, go through our ClearPass, boom, automatically put the VLANs on there. Any port you plug it in, it knows AP goes in this VLAN, boom, all automatic. Cool. Layer 3.
The computer that they all connect to is here.
They all connect over in our office. The whole network, actually, the whole district actually goes through a piece of fiber over in our office out to the Shields Road there.
You need to come check it out. We, that was one of the purchases I think we may have made before
Yes.
you guys came on the board. Nathan, did you?
I've looked at it.
Yeah, so it may have been when you came on, but before the others. So we, and it was a good thing too. We've got a whole kind of, a
Data center.
room built for, that Nathan could probably describe.
Our data center and backup is excellent.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, I guess you're staying up there to talk about
Yeah, I was gonna
E-rate.
say.
Is that a different item, or did you?
No.
plug that in on it?
Unless Tim
What we
can,
did
unless
on
Tim
this
can
one-
talk wide area network.
Yeah, I just wanted to enlighten you on this one is too, we put out for bid back in November, a bid to upgrade our network. This is on the WAN connectivity and the internet. Okay, what this part does is this allows us the connectivity issues, like to get from New Hope Elementary to here. What we've got currently is the elementary schools have 100 meg worth of bandwidth going to them, which is extremely hard to do when you're trying to do testing. So the plan we've got in place, we've got quotes from 3 vendors. We're gonna have a gig connectivity to every class, every school we have. And down here coming in, we're gonna have 5 gig worth of internet bandwidth. We presently have 1.5. So in essence, the elementary schools could be up to 10 times faster. The high schools will be twice as fast as they are now. And this is gonna allow us, when we do testing, we don't have to say, okay, we have to cut this service off and this service off. We can continue school for everybody while the testing is going on. And the beauty of this whole thing is we'll basically be getting away from AT&T, and our cost will still stay under budget. So I think this is a win-win for everybody. But it's a big contract, and it's E-rateable. E-rate pays for it. Our cost will be $135,000 a year, which we're budgeted $150 for it, so we come under cost on that. But I want to be all aware of it. But this will affect every kid. This will affect everybody.
You get away from AT&T and you get with who?
This will actually be through, it's called, a company called ITS. They won the bid. They'll be using Comcast, some of Google, New Hope Bell, Ardmore Bell. What they can do is get a lot of players to work together, where AT&T will not do that. It's all AT&T. So that we're coming back with cheaper rates this way, and that's allowing us to upgrade all of our schools and also our bandwidth coming in.
So each one of your sites conceivably could have different service providers. You could have Comcast
Yes,
at one
it
site.
will be.
Charter at another site. And I guess they're using some kind of cloud-based solution to kind of
Right.
link them all together.
They're all monitored all through their NOC in Montgomery.
Okay.
So they're the ones that'll make everybody play together. So it will be easy for us on our end.
Did you get all that, Ms. Stowe?
Yeah. That's why we got Nathan.
You're right. I'll tell you, we've got the most, a board of experts. I'll tell you, we've got from medical fields to networks and financial piece. Thank you, Mark.
Thank y'all.
All I know about it is I can't get on the internet.
All right, and Mr. Sully's going to talk a little bit about the virtual.
I'm going to talk about virtual school, but I can't help you with your password.
I don't think anyone can help her with
Maybe
that.
I've been phased out, you know?
You know, just saying. The, hopefully, as you're aware, 3 years ago, we launched this thing we now know as our virtual academy. So it's been pretty cool to be a pioneer, to sort of create something from, kind of build it from the ground up. When we asked our board 3 years ago to approve this policy 7.13, and I'd ask that you take a look at it, one of the things that we did initially, we obviously wanted to be in compliance with state law, and state law required that we had a policy that ensured that we would have a virtual curriculum available for our kids, our students in grades 7 through 12. So when we initially asked approval for this, we did so wanting to make sure we were in compliance, but with the hope that someday we would come back and ask our board to allow us to expand our virtual academy. And in this case, we're going to be asking our board to consider expanding it to include grades 3 through 6, in addition to grades 7 through 12. The reasons are many. We really wanted to kind of, we felt like our older students, our students in our secondary grades, were the ones that were most ready to take on this new challenge, while we figured out the bugs in it maybe and kind of worked through the process, and we feel very comfortable that we have done that now. We really wanted to make sure that we knew that curriculum would be available and would be developmentally appropriate and whatnot before we started moving it down into lower grades, and we feel very comfortable with our curriculum provider and that it will meet our needs there. So we do not, or I don't, in my research of best practice with virtual learning, it's not my hope, desire, or anything else. I don't think it is appropriate to go below grade 3. We do believe there's a market out there of students that may be looking forward to take advantage of this. We have tentatively discussed housing, or I say housing a virtual school, that's kind of an oxymoron, but we do need to have a place where students can go and take tests, and if they do need additional supports and things like that. But we've tentatively spoken with the principal at Mount Carmel and at Monrovia Elementary, considering those as our initial sites to house the elementary portion of this virtual academy. So with that said, that's the main request that we're bringing before you for your consideration. There are there are two other words that in reading over this that we felt like there would be a better way to phrase this on 7.13.4, where it talks about attendance. The second bullet and the second bullet under the second bullet, where it says physical attendance when directed. Right now, the verbiage is directed by the course. We would like to change course to virtual staff. So there are times where the teacher wants the student, we need face-to-face time, whether it's the student is not being successful in the course, whether we recognize the student needs additional supports in this. But really, the verbiage of the course directing that probably is something we would like to clean up while we're asking to add grade levels to this. And then the other thing is in the paragraph below that, the very last sentence, where it said a student's failure to comply with such requirements may result in administrative action, including but not limited to probation or removal. And we would say we would like to change the word class to be program there, because we're really not talking about removal from an individual class in that. If removal is warranted, then it would be removal from the virtual academy and the student would go back to their base school there. So we would be asking for those 3 changes to policy. Are there any questions about that, or?
One of the things with this and including these grade levels, and Ms. Shumate's going to give an update here in a little bit, is we're talking with the State Department of Education, and we think we're kind of getting at the point where it's grown where it can be supportive of its own cost center, which means right now the students are technically students at a school, although they may never go to that school. And some do for different extracurricular programs, but it's becoming at the population where we think that may be a course of action to take. So we're kind of working, it's a kind of a 2-year process. if we can get the timing of it right, we can kind of make it a year and a half processed, so they'll start kind of earning a principal unit, earning teaching units with that. That would happen after the next October count for the following school year, not the one coming up, so.
At that point, would you still have them at the two, at Mount Carmel and Monrovia, or would you have a dedicated location?
Yeah, I mean, and we could be flexible with that. We're thinking offering the elementary grades at Mount Carmel and Monrovia. Right now, our high school, our 7 through 12, right now it's just for 7 through 12 students. And we service them here at there's a corner room back in the Career Tech Center and at Sparkman 9. And there's a library classroom at Sparkman 9. And so we have 2 teachers, and they'll rotate, and Ms. Shoemate rotates. And she's going to get through some of her particulars there, but we think kind of we're at the point now where it's growing its legs enough to be able to kind of stand and be able to kind of do that.
What would you say to those that would say the virtual academy is good for students in 7 through 12, but is it really appropriate for kids as young as the 3rd grade? How would you address that?
So, you know, really, we've been, watching other programs and their success. So Athens City has the Renaissance Academy. Limestone County has now had a virtual academy for a few years. But I think Athens has sort of been the trailblazer in this in North Alabama anyway. And they've been offering virtual learning opportunities for elementary students since, I believe, since they opened. And have been doing so very successfully. We obviously have, it's my understanding that the majority of our students that are in homeschool in Madison County that don't attend Madison County schools are elementary age students. I think there's a bigger market there. I think more parents are comfortable with elementary curriculum and the support that they can give their child, rather than the support maybe that they can give a secondary student. So by the fact that we already have a number of students taking advantage of a homeschool curriculum, I think offering this opportunity for them where it would, in essence, they would get likely the same education for free that they're paying for right now, would be the reason why I feel like this is appropriate. And just doing a lot of research on virtual learning, I mean, this seems to be, again, the lowest grade level that I think it is appropriate for. But it seems to be working grades 3 and up, so.
And this, a lot of times, homeschool students will come in middle school or that kind of thing too. And so it really offers those folks a guaranteed kind of curriculum that's kind of part of what we're doing. So it allows for easier integration.
And we would be looking at the core basics with grades 3 through 6. Reading, math, science, social studies, language arts, and spelling would be our focus in those grade levels. This wouldn't be about, trying to offer 20 electives to students and things like this. We would be supplying the basics. We feel like in most cases, if a parent does not choose to have their child in traditional school, they're doing so because they want to provide those types of opportunities to their child outside of the school day. Outside of the traditional school. Whether it's trips, whether the child's involved in activities, whether, sometimes there could be health-related issues or social-emotional issues still, even with young children. But usually those extra things are things the parents want to guide for their students, so.
So the provider of the 7 through 12 will be the same provider for the 3 through 6?
Yes, that's correct.
And y'all looked at it?
Yes, yeah. And we'll have our teachers come in next month, the 14th and 15th, I believe, of March. We've got teachers coming in to, we vetted the curriculum, but we're going to have teachers, specifically compare it, not just we know it aligns to our course of study, but sequencing of the course material, everything, to try to make it match as much as we can what an experience would look like in one of our traditional classrooms.
Like with the high school, is it you're either a traditional student or you're a virtual student? There's no mixing of the two, right?
Well, yes and no. And Ms. Shoemate, I don't want to steal her thunder. I know she'll talk some about this in a minute, but generally speaking, a student goes to Virtual Academy to get their high school curriculum. You know, that's where they get their curriculum. But we have students that go back to their base school to take electives and to participate in activities. But, you know, so they're not just there. I mean, we have kids doing both, and every year we do this, we're looking for more and more ways to use this curriculum really to our students' advantage, to open opportunities. We're looking at things, partnering virtual with career tech, you know, to try to expand opportunities for kids to be able to, you know, to take advantage of that. So we don't want to hinder a child's experience in school because they choose to go this route. And so far, our staff's done a very good job of making sure that doesn't happen.
Will you have like programs like AR Reader and stuff like that available to these kids, or strictly?
No, ma'am. Their curriculum-wise, their subjects are available, you know, through a digital provider. You know, could a student have access to AR? I'm not going to say they couldn't. I mean, that would be something I'm sure they could work with their base school to support that, but.
Thank you, Tim.
So with that said, just as a means of introduction, so I told you 3 years ago, we started building this plane, and we took off before it was finished. Right, Ms. Shoemate? And we've been building this plane as we've been flying it for the last 3 years, and so far, we've not crashed it. And so I would like to introduce the pilot of that still developing plane, Tandy Shoemate. She's our administrator of our virtual academy, and in all seriousness, Tandy's done an excellent job of helping guide this program from its inception, and really done a great job at this. And I know she's put together a lot of information I think will be interesting to you to learn more about.
Thanks. Okay, I placed to each of you a copy of the PowerPoint, but I also put a little sticky note on one, and you'll realize why when we get there, okay? The program, it is ad minimum. We did start 3 years. That contract ends in May, and we are going to be going to Odyssey, where it is a new program. It is also one of the programs that Athens Renaissance uses. We also will be trained the end of this month in Macon, Georgia. We will also build classes on March 14th and 15th from our local teachers that will come in and help us build those classes. It's a very good program. Our staff, I'm the administrator. It kind of got off a little bit. I am not Miss Pearson, I'm Miss Shoemate. It kind of changed, but I'm Miss Shoemate. Miss Cubic, even though she belongs to the PACE Academy, she does do credit check sheets for our students that come in, and that's 2 sets of eyes, and that's a good thing. So we make sure the students get what they need to be successful with the 24 required credits. Miss Roberts is the math teacher, and then Miss Pearson is English Language Arts. We are all highly qualified high school teachers, 712. Miss Pearson does have, I think, a middle school endorsement to, I think, maybe the 4th or 5th grade. Roles, we tutor one-on-one, small group, large group. We check daily attendance. Admin does not have an attendance component, so Miss Roberts has to go in and check every student every day to see if they logged in. If they did not, then I report that to the base school. We have to regrade every unit test for partial credits. Admin does not do a partial credit. On an English assignment, if you have 5 answers, you get 1 of the 5 incorrect, it will mark it all incorrect. We go back and give partial credit. We do that for every student in every class. We grade all assignments. The Adminum program has all the answers to every assignment, minus the English, and Ms. Pearson grades that. So we have to grade every assignment for every class that every student submits. We also have to check required lab times. If you are a level 1 student, that means you're brand new. You're coming in 2 hours a week. If you are a level 2, that means you've progressed on progress and you're checking in every day and you're on track. You can be moved to a level 2 2 times a month, once between the 1st and the 15th, the second between the 16th and the last day. If you are a level 3, I see you 1 time a month. Those are my first kids that came to the program. They understand the program. They're doing very well. We also email students and parents weekly. I do texting. I have a school phone, so I text parents and students every day or every week as need be. Also, we forward all communications from the base schools. We have a pretty good relationship with the base schools. All senior information, juniors, clubs, National Honor Society, we forward anything that the base schools send to us, we forward it out to our groups. We conduct monthly activities, so every month we have an activity in each of our labs. And also we send monthly newsletters. The monthly activities, essay writing. Most of our kids, they may not know how to write an essay, so we work on that. Note-taking skills, it's very important in our program. This month, next Tuesday night, we will redo a test night. You can choose one test that you may not have scored as well as you wanted to on, and you can redo it one time. We also did an Algebra 2 with Trig night. That's probably one of the hardest courses in Adminum, and the kids need a little bit more one-on-one, so Ms. Roberts does a one-on-one night with them as a group. We also teach MLA and APA writing formats. Staff expectations, we believe just like Teddy Roosevelt, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So we participate in our students' lives outside the program. We go to football games, cheerleading, wrestling, baseball, softball, you name it, and we try to be there to support them at their base school. So we get a schedule from our kids. Lab locations, we have 2 labs. The classroom at Sparkman 9 will only hold up to about 25 students. The lab over at Tech, which you may know as Vicki Sullivan's old lab, that has been renovated thanks to Carrie and Joe this past summer, and it's state-of-the-art now. We have new furniture. It's great. We have an access point that Mr. Wilson talked about, but that access point will only hold 67 on wireless at one time. So I have to break up my orientations into 2 sections because I don't have enough wireless in my lab, if it's full. Enrollment, the numbers, just to kind of look at, put them by families to some degree. So if you will look, female and male, those are our enrollments. In 2016, we started with 34 kids. 2017, 103. This year, I just locked 250 in yesterday. I will hit 251 on Friday. I've got one coming in Friday. So we are growing very, very, very quickly. The achievements, some of the things I think should be noted about our program, in December 2018, we had 38 students marked as mid-year graduates. Every one of them got a CCR before they walked. And to be in virtual, you have to CCR in one way or the other. We have an online program that they can get as a CCR. Also, we had one student move from the 8th grade to the 9th grade. She did all 8th grade work in one semester and moved to Hazel Green in January to begin her 9th grade year. She's an accelerated student. We had 26 students move from the 11th to 12th grade to finish in 3 years. That's the goal of most virtual students. We call it 24 and done. When you get the 24 required credits, you are finished. You do not have to take any more. We monitor students that attend Tech, and also they take one virtual class, and those that return to their base school. We had 14 students return to their base school at semester break. 6 needed to go back. It was just not the self-discipline they needed to get through the rigor of the program. But the other ones, we also monitored them to finish up the classes that they were in. So it's not just the 250, we have more than that on our slate. Also during last school year, one student finished all 4 years in 2 years, and she's doing an online social work program at Troy and being successful. She was our SPEAK representative in Madison County as well. At-risk students. Any counselor that calls me and says, hey, I've got one possibly going to drop out, can you help me? Sure can. Let's get set down and talk. I go to all schools and will work with all counselors and students to try and meet the need of the child to keep them from dropping out. Attendance issues. A lot of students in virtual, their attendance was unreal. So what we did is we look at, by going on virtual and logging in every day and working from home, that helped the schools on their attendance rates. Medical issues. Probably 75% of our students have medical issues. and you will see the sticky. There are several that have severe medical issues within our program. We have young mothers. We have transfer students. I gained a transfer student today. She was my 250. She came in from Florida. She brought in .5 credits. You have to have a HO. I was able to put her in my .5 classes to equal the HO credit to graduate. We have migrant students. She comes to us in October to December of every year out of Texas. She works up at, her parents work at the Cotton Gin up at New Market. Transitioning PACE students, sometimes kids that come out of PACE don't want to go back to their base school, so they'll come virtual. Special education and 504. Medical needs. At Sparkman 9, Nurse Olson must be aware of all students at S9 with medical needs, but she also has to know the medical plans for every student in virtual, because they can go to Sparkman 9 at any time they want to, and they will follow the teachers if they need tutoring. We do not have a set nurse at the Career Tech. We have a contract nurse. She has to know everything about the kids on the Tech campus, but she also has to know all 250 students, and she's a 3-hour nurse, whoever Ms. Stiles sends me, that's whoever the contract nurse is. So they have to know all the students and their health plans. State assessments, tomorrow we will be doing demographics. I have 72 seats set up in the auditorium next door. We do administer the state assessments. We started doing that this year. Ms. Kubik and I asked Mr. Solly, because the kids were not returning to their base school for state assessment, and that is how we are graded. So Ms. Kubik and I appealed to Mr. Solly. He said, yes, you can do your own state assessments. So now we do. So you want to stay in virtual? You have to show up for the state assessment. And actually, it's state law. To participate in a virtual program, you must also participate in state assessments. So we've seen an increase of that, and we could not do it without Mr. Romine and his staff. There are 3 of us that run our program. We cannot test all the students that have to be tested. So Mr. Romine does help us, and the e-learning day that Mr. Massey grants us helps us as well, because that frees up people to test us. Attendance. There are fewer issues at risk, and also daily attendance is required. You can log into the program anywhere you have internet, anywhere in the world. I have a student in Massachusetts right now working. They can go anywhere. You can take a family vacation at any time, as long as you can log in, work, and make your percentages. And each child has a percentage they have to meet every Friday. So that helps at-risk kids, it helps absenteeism, and it helps them be successful. Accelerated pace, you can go as fast as you want to go. I've already had 3 students finish all their senior work by the last week of January or last week. They're finished for the semester. Most finish in 3 years or less. That is their goal. Tutoring, we offer it in English and math. That's what we're highly qualified. But also Ms. Starr from the PACE Academy comes over on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons to help our kids in chemistry and physics. That's where we see the greatest need for science. Community service, Ms. Kubik oversees all that. We do Special Olympics. We've built scarecrows for botanical gardens for 2 years. We do puffer socks for Tut Fan. We go to nursing homes, Casa Garden, whatever Ms. Kubik designs, and the kids do participate. Also, we do special events. We collected food for Thanksgiving, distributed that to a needy family in our community. We also did toys for Christmas and gave it to young families in our community. And we will recognize our graduates in May. And also, we have a 30-plus club. So anybody that makes over 30-plus, we give us a certificate, just like the base school does, because they miss out on that. Social media, we do have a Twitter. Feel free to follow us. Looking forward, we're going to start accepting applications March 1st. That's in the process. Also, if you do agree to what Mr. Solly discussed a while ago and change the board policy, then we will go to grades 3 through 12, and also, tentatively speaking, Mount Carmel and Monrovia. And questions?
Are you going to restrict the number of elementary children for the first year? Or are you going to just take everybody that applies?
We've talked, I haven't talked to Peggy about that, but asking I discuss that. I think a lot of that depends on the staffing. You know, if, obviously, we have to monitor the number of students versus the number of adults that we have. So the number of adults that we place in that pool. Ultimately, there will be some kind of cap.
It's really like launching a whole new program, in my opinion.
Yes and no. We've learned what Ms. Shoemade and them have learned about the logistics of just working with a digital program, that part will be ahead of the game, but dealing with a different age group for kids will be, that will present new challenges, no doubt.
Ms. Schumate, you said that Ed Medham does not tally the daily attendance, nor does it post-test grades for partial credit. So does the new OdysseyWare do that?
OdysseyWare does have a component for attendance. You can put in a start date and an end date. The way we do it now is Ms. Roberts checks attendance at 11:30 every night, and when she gets to work in the morning, she handles the attendance side. She does the collection. I email the schools. So OdysseyWare does have that component, so that is one thing that is going to be beneficial, and they will grade they are set up for partial credit. If it has 5 responses, it will only count what you did get incorrect against you. However, it will not grade the work. So we will still be grading every assignment for every child in every subject. That part, I don't think you're going to find a program that will do that. So the essays, the discussions, the OdysseyWare is a very good program. And to address, I think Ms. Stowe asked the question about elementary. I contacted base school elementary teachers today. Ms. Mortis was able to get me some names of recommendations of students to come in and help us align the classes, and I can show any of you that at any time if you would like to see it. So in the OdysseyWare program, the elementary is really good, but we've got to align it to where it flows correctly. I did meet on the high school level, I met with Melanie Dalton. She helped us under the Adminum program do chemistry. I met with her last week. I will go to any school and meet with any teacher on the committee to build the classes. It's called Customize the Classes is what OdysseyWare calls it. And I met with Ms. Dalton and I showed her Unit 1 and she said, that's identical to how I teach my chemistry. So it's a pretty good alignment. So I think in the elementary levels, what I have seen, it looks really good. So on the attendance side, yes, it will help us some.
So from the attendance side, is it like so many, when do you get notified? If they don't do it like for 2 days, does that trigger something that?
It's triggered every day.
Okay.
So every day, Ms. Roberts checks attendance for the day before. Then I will send either an email to the school, attach the student and the parent to the email, because we do everything email and text. We're virtual. And then I will let them know. So the school will count them absent because they still belong to the base school. Then if I see it becomes a problem, because Ms. Roberts will tell me how many times they've been absent on the email she sends me every day, then I will send a direct text to the parent and the student. And it does go against their attendance, so it will put some parents in truancy issues if we have a problem, but I usually don't let it get that far. We have to have a one-on-one meeting if that happens.
So it's just a login. Once they log into the system, that's counted as present.
Yes.
Okay.
They do not have to launch a class, because what if some of my level 3s will do? They can get through a class in about 10 hours. Because they've learned the program. You have to know how to read it. I compare it in orientation, and Ms. Rucker has sat through an orientation that I gave. So she understands, kind of what I'm expressing. But it's like a video game. If you have a student that plays a video game, and I always laugh and say in my age it was Pac-Man. The goal of Pac-Man was not to be eaten. You wanted to get away. It's the same way in this program. You cannot advance until you understand what you're doing, because it's tutorial and then mastery. Then you have to take a test. So as you progress, just like a video game, and the kids get the language, they get the verbiage of a video game. So they know that to go from Unit 1 to Unit 2, you must complete all of Unit 1 and be successful to go to Unit 2. So that's one reason we have a lot of success in the program. But as far as attendance, you can do it anywhere you have a phone, and you can launch it from your phone.
Do the students have to take a final exam?
Who asked that?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out where.
Okay.
Yes, and that is different than the base schools. Base schools have an exemption policy. We do not exempt in virtual, because basically you could exempt yourself 4 days and work 12 hours in one day and get your percentages met. At the end of every part A or B, and that's like a 9 weeks, there is a final. You have to take a final, and that is 20%. So it's weighted heavily in our program.
Are all the tests multiple choice?
No, ma'am.
Okay, there's essays and, okay.
There's writing, there's also fill in the blank. And one of the things with Adminum is if you do not answer the question the way Adminum thinks you should answer it, like 0 or point 0.5 or 0.5, or if it's not identical to Ed Minimum, it will count it wrong. So we go into every problem that they miss on a test to see if the answer is correct. And then we have to recalculate their grade and do a grade override for every test.
So when we chose Ed Minimum, Odyssey Wear was one of the finalists, and Odyssey Wear has really cool videos. It's much more presentable and it looks really nice and cute and smooth. But how they billed was per seat. Ed Minimum was more kind of matter of fact, but we got a district license for everybody in our district, and we thought that, so every teacher had access to plug their stuff into their class, and we just didn't know 3 years ago how much, we wanted all of our teachers to be able to access what our virtual school had. 3 years growing, our teachers there's so many resources that our classroom teachers don't need us to purchase something they can use. There's all kind of other things they can pull. So we think now is kind of the time in this, we can make the move to the Odyssey Wear thing and it'd be a good fit for the virtual school, but not every teacher will have access to everything. It's more of a per seat charge than a district license. So it's going to be a good move for.
It is going to be a good move.
Actually, all teachers can access this, but not all students can.
Got you.
Right, the per seat is for the student, correct? Okay.
As long as the teacher doesn't use the curriculum, have their students test with it, they can pull lessons out, show it, show it on the screen and whatnot.
If there's a video or something like that, okay. All right.
To answer Ms. Stowe, she asked a question earlier, and I think Mr. Solly deferred it to me. How do we use it with other schools? Every student that comes to us, I have to look at what do they need to graduate, and how can we make it work. 2 weeks ago, I had a young lady from Sparkman come to me. We were already 4 weeks in. She was in the medical academy, and she was in French. I ran her through virtual for her other 2 classes. I did not drop her out of French or medical because you have to apply to get in the medical academy at Sparkman. I knew she could not get in at Tech. They were full. So she takes 2 at Sparkman, 2 virtually. I also worked with Mr. Romine. Any student that comes to Tech that wants to go to Tech and be an athlete so that they don't miss their athletic PE, football players, cheerleaders, dance, and they still want to go to Tech, they were going to be short 1 credit. We run that 1 core through us. So they can now do sports, tech, and 1 class virtually. So every school is kind of set up different. If at robotics at Hazel Green, we leave them in the robotics class. As long as they have transportation to and from every day for that class, they can still be in that class because we do not offer that in a virtual setting. So we meet the needs of kids however we can.
So a student that is that becomes ill, can't get to school, or struggles to get to school because of whatever illness or whatever may be going on, disability that may be going on, can they go into the virtual academy at that point?
Yes, and when I discussed the large amount of medical needs that I have in the program, if a student is admitted to Decatur General West or to maybe Chattanooga or Birmingham, wherever the facility may be, as long as they can log in, then usually the person over education at the facility will contact me. I tell them what they need to do, and they still work while they're there. I have some very severe students in virtual, and yes, they can work at home as long as they have internet.
But it's
So-
not necessarily, hey, I'm going to miss the next 2 weeks, go to virtual
Understand.
school for 2 weeks.
So
and
it's
come
a long-
back.
The one thing, Mr. Watson, that we cannot do, you cannot go back and forth
Right.
between regular. Once you start virtual, you have to wait until a break to go back because we have to do the grades.
Correct.
So in high school, it's usually, if it's a Part A, B class, I can send them back at the end of the first 9 weeks, or they can elect to go back under policy. Or we wait till the semester break. Middle school needs to be a semester break if we're too far in. And also, I can take students that need to come from the base school to me, and as long as I can show that they've mastered a standard in the 3 weeks they were in a class, then we can fix the virtual class to show reflection of standards mastered. So if there's 18 and they've already completed 6, I can fix 12 standards that they have not completed because we align to the state standards. So about any need, we can address virtually, or we try to.
So you have 2, maybe 3 people that are going through all this work and grading and going back and checking?
Yes, ma'am. The way it's set up is Miss Roberts, we kind of do our own thing. Miss Roberts does all attendance. She checks at 11:30 at night and in the morning. Because if you don't catch them right before midnight, it'll time out and you can't see them till the next morning. She does attendance and she does the newsletters. She handles science tutoring that she can handle, not highly qualified, but because we have the answers. And she also does all math. Miss Pearson does English language arts. And she works with all 504s and special eds. She oversees those. I handle all electives and all history. So we kind of tutor based on what our field is. And we also grade any classes, or if one of us is out. If Miss Roberts is out and she's scheduled to be in S9 on Wednesday, I go to S9 and cover the lab. The only thing I cannot do is math. Miss Pearson and I do not do math. So, but yes, we do all that. We grade all the papers, we do the attendance, we check partial credits on all the tests. Every child, every class, yes.
And that's one of the things, if we go standalone and we get approved by the state, they can start earning counselors and teachers.
What would happen, like with athletics, if you were standalone?
So I talked with Coach Savarese about that last week, actually, and
Personal coach salary.
I did, Mr. Savarese. We were at a meeting together in Mobile, and because everybody does this a little bit differently. There's some school systems that take their virtual students from outside their district. Some take them from all over the state, but he said if we, we're not taking out of district kids. Thanks,
Am I
Ms.
good?
Schumate. Yeah.
Any others?
I mean, how many hours a week grading?
How long does it take me to grade papers? I grade about an hour and a half a day or 3 hours the next day. It also depends on the students as they submit the assignments. So we go 7 through, across the board, and we offer a lot of classes, so it just depends.
Thank you, Ms. Schumate. Thank you.
But Coach Savarese said if we keep it in district, like we're not taking out of district kids, then it won't be a problem.
So they just go back like they were.
He actually said if they're enrolled in if it's standalone, they're enrolled in the virtual academy and they want to play, generally what it would be if a school doesn't offer that sport, our virtual academy wouldn't offer sports. They would just play at whatever they would be zoned to, and then the eligibility would go there. So it doesn't seem like it would be too complicated there.
Probably like a homeschool person.
Well, and I didn't want to necessarily bring that up. The one thing that is, with all this, it gets confusing. So I was in line at the grocery store or something, and a parent who homeschool their child, they can come and participate in athletics because the state passed a law where they can homeschool, the Tim Tebow law. But some want to come and participate in choir or band, and this one parent wanted to just participate in calculus. I just want my kid to come take calculus at your school. And I'm like, well, enroll the school. Well, no, I don't want to enroll them. I want to homeschool. I'm like, well, what about our virtual school? You can enroll in virtual school, and then they can go take calculus at the school base. No, I really like, and I'm like, okay, well, you can't be a homeschool and then come take a class from us. So you can come play a sport because that's the law, but you can't play in the band, can't dance, and can't take choir. You gotta, if you're gonna be homeschooled, you can play a sport, but you gotta.
I thought you could do those extracurricular stuff.
It's just for sport.
It's for sports. Isn't that right?
They do have to actually enroll in that school.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, and they can take a course, right?
If there's a course affiliated with, if they're practicing during the course, they have to be allowed to be in the course.
I haven't looked at that in a long time, but
We have a couple of folks that do that, and there was a softball player at Sparkman last year, and we've got a couple that I'm sure may be aware of, but yeah, but there is some confusion with the virtual piece over there too. All right, Ms. Stiles, are you ready? Is,
You
Here for,
Did you want to skip?
did I miss that?
You, Carrie?
Oh.
I mean, we can go ahead.
Gary, we'll come back to you. I'll talk about that later. Ms. Stiles is already at the podium. So, Ms. Stiles was our school nurse at Monrovia Middle School, and when she was a school nurse there, we dealt with times of the flu, Monrovia Elementary.
Yes.
And we dealt with the flu last year and the year before, and we're kind of dealing with it now, and
It's seasonal.
it's seasonal, so.
Sneeze, did you say seasonal?
I have been asked to share a little bit about how we track the flu numbers and procedures that we use in Madison County Schools. We start tracking the flu as soon as we come back from Christmas break. We tend to track it until spring break or about an 8-week time frame typically. We'll track it that long or until the numbers start to trend down. The numbers are shared every day. The nurses enter data into the document, and it's shared through Drive with central office on a weekly basis, typically on Friday. The last couple of weeks, we've been sharing every day because our numbers are high. Nurses also report to Alabama Department of Education. There's certain criteria that they have to use, but pretty much 20% of a classroom on any given day, or it can be a club or some organization on any given day, they report that to Alabama Department of Public Health, so they keep that criteria there. Our numbers are high, but when you look at North Alabama, we're trending way below what's happening in North Alabama. If you look at ADPH today, in North Alabama, 9.2% of the population last week, 9.2% of the population has the flu. So we're trending way below that. It's a lot of flu. We're third in the state for flu cases in our area. So that's how we track it. Now here's the guidelines that we use. We use guidelines set out by CDC years ago, and let me read this so I will make sure that I get the right document in case you want to look it up, because there'll be a parent that might want to look it up. Guidance for school administrators to help reduce the spread of seasonal flu in K-12 schools. So we follow those guidelines, and then I also am in communication with Tony Ritchie, who's with Alabama Department of Public Health, almost daily when we're in the high numbers. So those are two entities that we get guidelines from. Neither of these entities recommend closing schools for seasonal flu. The systems that have closed were not guided by ADPH or CDC to close their schools. The evidence is just not there to support that closing schools decreases the spread of seasonal flu. So, what do they recommend? But getting vaccinated. That's the number one way that we can prevent the spread of flu. We had a vaccination clinic in the fall for our kids, and then in November for our employees. We vaccinated over 300 students at that vaccination clinic, which is a lot. Other things that we can do are educate. The nurses are doing an exceptional job at educating parents, sending out information on ways to prevent the flu and to stay home encourage your kids to stay home if they're sick. We're doing lots of cleaning, extra cleaning, in addition to sending out extra cleaning crews at night for those high-volume schools. Mr. Massey sent out information to the administrators to kind of think of other things that we could do. One of the things that I thought was a good idea to build in a hand washing time in the elementary schools for students to go and wash their hands because they're not washing their hands. Other things that we would like to encourage is social distancing. Try to decrease those opportunities for large groups of students to get together. And that's a little bit difficult to do. We want to limit our outside visitors, and of course we want to ensure that the parents follow Madison County Schools as far as our illness policy. Are our numbers high? Yes, they are. But I see this as an opportunity for the nurses to encourage people to get vaccinated, because I want to give an example of how that works. One of our nurses tracked last week's cases, and she had 31 confirmed cases of the flu. Out of those 31 cases of the confirmed flu, 25 of those students had not been vaccinated. 5 of those 31 students had been vaccinated, but their illnesses were very short and their symptoms were much milder. So we need to increase education related to flu vaccination in general. I'll put that plug in right now. We're going to continue to monitor, and we're going to continue to report the flu over the next few weeks. However, if it tracks like previous years, and I think it will, last week was our peak week. It's very high, but we'll start to see it trend down. So I think we have reached the high point, and we're headed in the right direction. I would like to thank every custodian and every administrator that got their Clorox wipes out and wiped door handles and tables, and those things work, and that's very appreciated. I would also like to acknowledge the 30 full-time school nurses and the 15 contract nurses that work extremely hard to serve the children in our school system. Any questions?
What about the high schools with the exam policy and how it might make you come to school when you might not otherwise? Did you see any reflection of that in the numbers?
I don't have that data, but I can say that we do have the exclusion return to school policy now, or where the nurse can excuse the student and they don't have to go to the physician, so they're excused, and that would be in addition to their parent notes, 8 notes. So it's a little wider leeway as far as absences. I don't know if I've answered your question or not.
I would say, like last year, Buckhorn's peak week, which is odd, the peak week last year was the first week in February. This year, the exact same week with the most cases. Last year, Buckhorn had 55 during the peak week cases, and this year it's 35. Hazel Green had, yeah, or confirmed cases with the flu.
I think what Sherry's asking is, are they coming to school with the flu?
Got you.
Keep from,
Happy to take it.
so they would be
Yeah.
exempt. And I'm sure you don't have that.
Yeah, you would.
We do, I don't have those numbers. We do have higher numbers in elementary school and middle school, and, that is kind of self-explanatory. They don't, they have worse hygiene than your high schoolers. So I don't think, the numbers are as high in the high school setting, so I can't answer that question. That would be an administrative.
Well, we'll spin that into the discussion on the exemption. I appreciate your time there, and you don't have to hang out for that. Well, that's going to be probably something we discuss here.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Stiles.
So it doesn't seem like that the exam exemption policy has increased the cause of the flu, but I've definitely heard the case that the accusation that I'm going to cause a flu outbreak because this exam exemption policy. That said, we're graded on attendance, and some of the report card grades, our elementary schools, is 15% of their overall grade is on chronic absenteeism. So schools are incentivizing attendance, and whether that's through parties or privileges or exam exemptions, that was something you guys got involved in. That's going to be a factor. That said, my son was exempt last semester and won't be exempt this semester. He got sick, got the stomach bug, and hey, matter of fact, you're not going to school with that. So obviously, that was one of the things that we carried over from our academic guide for later discussion. But that was
Most of our high schools, do they have an online component with their class? So if they were out, they could still be counted absent because they're doing their classes electronically?
They don't have the policy like Virtual Academy does where they can be counted present if they do their work. If they log in and do their work and they're absent, they're absent. So it is not, they don't adopt the attendance policy even if there's an online component to the class. Unless it's a set e-learning day, like next Wednesday would be, is an e-learning day there. They would be counted present there. As a district, we're determining that is a day too.
So if the nurse sends you home at high school, is that count against your exam?
You're absent, and that will count towards your exemption status, yep.
Okay.
So Carrie, how many restrooms do we have in Madison County that don't have hot water?
I tell you percentage-wise, about 95%.
And I think that's a real deterrent to children not washing their hands. I just can remember teaching, and I didn't want to wash my hands in the winter either. So cold, you know?
That's the health requirement, that's what they're always put in, until recently that's changed. Yes, ma'am, 95% of them don't.
It's a health requirement not to have hot water?
Yeah, it was not a requirement to have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is just a random point of information, but I find it somewhat odd that we've incentivized attendance in many different ways, but the only one I get complaints on is the exam policy. Like at Riverton Elementary, we had Valentine's Day parties and a free bicycle and trips to the Havoc game, and I don't have a single parent upset that their kid got knocked out of that because of the flu or because of an illness. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what that means. I just know that I find it odd that all the way up until high school, everybody's fine with it, having some sort of incentivization, and nobody has a complaint about it. But suddenly in high school, there's this, oh my gosh, I can't believe you kicked my kid out for being sick. I don't know what that means, but I just find it odd. And I just, I worry that if we stop incentivizing things in general, and maybe there are better ways to do it, but it just seems odd to me that we've chosen this to be such a centerpiece of whether or not we should incentivize attendance. And I think it goes into a bigger issue that I don't know that we should be graded particularly on attendance. I think attendance is very much important, and I think it is something we should encourage and find ways to make it to where children and older students do want to be available for classes. But I don't know that we can always influence the behavior of our families and whether or not they are capable of making kids come to school. I mean, in general, the state saying that attendance is an issue incentivizes all of us to send kids to school sick, not just our exemption policy. I think it's a much bigger issue. I think we're kind of putting a lot of money into something that we haven't even proven actually work. I mean, I understand that going to school works, but has it actually kept the kid who still has 10 and 12 and 15 absences a year from actually having those statewide? I don't think we've given this a large enough optic lens to be able to even tell whether it's effective, and yet we're making massive changes. And not massive, but that's too big a word, but I mean, we've spent a lot of time and energy on this attendance thing, and I know our attendance is a little better, but are our students actually learning? Have our grades come up? Have we proved any correlation between that and the grades improving? I mean,
I think more importantly, have we impacted those students that we were targeting with
Right.
this,
The
with this
kids
whole
that missed 12
incentivizing?
days
Yeah,
a
exactly.
semester, I mean-
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, are we really fixing the problem of those students that are chronically absent with this policy, or are we just creating another bureaucratic nightmare for everybody? I don't know.
So I actually, and this is anecdotally, I ran into a former student that I taught, and whose daughter is in our schools and has had the flu and had to miss several days, not in high school, but, and I asked, I said, now, did we have the exam exemption policy when you were in school? He's like, oh yeah, missed 3 days, make a know you're exempt. And I said, it was just, nobody ever complained about it. It was just it. And I guess about 8 or 9 years ago, the board got rid of that. And then it was like wailing and gnashing of teeth. And then we brought it back because, okay, we'll just bring back an old policy. Everybody will love it. It's kind of because everybody took exams. And it's odd. And I said, there's a lot of criticism for that. And it was hard. He didn't understand. He's like, well, if you don't have the policy, everybody's taking the exam. Why is it? So it's almost like people forgot we were giving exams. It was like either we never did exams and we said, okay, you got to take an exam. You missed too many days. So, and the one thing Dave does bring up, I think a good point. Our threshold is 3, 2, and 1, and 0, depending on the grade. If the goal here is chronic absenteeism, do you raise that? Do you raise it to 6? So you can miss 3 or 4 days if you get sick and then recuperate and come back.
And probably some of the systems who've closed, they closed for that very reason, to keep their attendance numbers looking good. It wasn't that they probably were worried.
Yeah, and we were on a group,
We're playing a game.
well, and we talked.
Report card.
And we talked about with the, I got a group text, so there's superintendents in North Alabama, and those that did close, they said it was because of their faculty. They had a third of their faculty was out, and they just couldn't run school. So we were starting monitoring our, faculty attendance and things like that. So that kind of drove that. But yeah, the Department of Health is telling us don't close, doesn't help fix the problem. The one thing of why is chronic absenteeism a thing, and this is maybe something you want to get involved in, the state Department of Education sets the report card metrics, and the state board approves that every year. Every year they can tinker with it and change it. And right now, they're talking about what do we change for next year. The state board, the previous state board, highly emphasized they wanted chronic absenteeism to be part of that. Now, the reason is, the research behind it is at-risk students, that's probably the biggest indicator for an at-risk student. If they're chronically absent, there's something going on you need to pay attention to. The thing is, we were already paying attention to that before it was a report card. Our social workers, the first thing they did was identify our chronically absent students. Let's see what's going on. I think the state felt like to get people to pay attention to it, they had to make it a hit on your overall grade if you're not paying attention to it. I don't, so whether that should be a weight in there, that is a State Department, State Board decision that they probably would, I don't know how much they've heard from local boards about the chronic absenteeism thing. I know superintendents have talked to the state superintendent about that.
Well, our absenteeism, our number for total people absent has improved, is my understanding from hearing from high school principals, and I think Mr. Solly earlier. But have we actually impacted what we were trying to fix? I think, and with the exam policy, it seems what we're trying to do is create an incentive, but what parents are asking us to do is create so many parameters around it that everybody gets in.
Right.
And I have a daughter who gets the flu shot and gets the flu every year. Now, thank God the flu shot makes it to where it's not as bad as it could be. The year she got it and didn't have the flu shot, we were in the hospital. But she gets it every year. I don't send her to school, but I've never expected anybody to make an exception for that either. So that's what I guess I struggle with. If we make a whole bunch of parameters, are we actually even still offering an incentive for absenteeism? Or are we now just making sure folks don't have to take an exam?
Right.
But I do understand our principals' needs, and that's what I struggle with being able to incentivize absenteeism. And I don't really know of anything else at the high school level that's any more arduous than having to take exams, except maybe, in my case, the prom. But that's a lot of dress. It just is. But
That's why you have boys.
why? But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know the answer, but I know that offering the incentive has helped our numbers, but I don't know that it has helped those kids who are, the real problem has nothing to do with whether or not they showed up at school.
Yeah, the problem is if they're chronically absent, there's something going on there.
Right.
And we need to go find that out. So now the one thing, if you do say, hey, you need to come to school, and if they get prosecuted, they tend to come more. Now, that said, 4 of our 5 high schools last year had chronic absenteeism, which is greater than 15 absences, more than 20%. And that's much higher than our elementary schools and that kind of thing. And so we felt like that was why the high school principals asked you guys to consider this, that policy change last year, was they've tried the parties, they've tried the good standing. And, but it looks like we're anticipating it's going to cut the chronic absenteeism by 10 points on average for those schools. So,
10 percentage points? Or
yeah, 10 percentage points. I would think those that had 23, 24, 25, I think the chronic absenteeism rate, they're tracking to be around 15. So it's, when they were over 20, they were closer to 23, 24, 25. And it's on that state report card by each school, that document that I sent when we did that last month, reviewed that. You can see each high school's chronic absenteeism there, and you can look at the middle schools and elementary schools too. Honestly, I've had middle school teachers and middle school administrators want to be included in to have an exam and to have an exemption policy there. They think it would help, to help them too with that. So as we're kind of hesitant about moving forward with that, our 7th and 8th grade crew wants to be part of it. So it's going to be something that, it wasn't on I know it was going to be tied into this, but it wasn't necessarily we're not going to make a decision on that tonight, but,
I don't think we're in a position to change course tonight because of the flu problem. I mean, we've put in place something, I'm not too sure that we can make a change at this point, but I do think we need to look at it again at the end of the school year, look at the numbers. Specifically, I'd like to see, are we truly having an impact on those percentage of students that are the ones that are chronically absent? And I think everybody knows who that is at the high school level. They probably have a record of it. I was never a fan of the whole incentive thing, certainly with the final exam portion of it. I think there are other things that we could possibly implement that are as effective, but I'm not too sure. But I don't know if we're in a position tonight or the rest of this school year to eliminate or to cut back or to do something with the current policy. I think we're just going to have to let it run its course like the flu, unfortunately. That's just my personal opinion.
This year, but you have the option for next.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. We need to review it again at the end of the school year before we move into the next school year to see if this is really the best way to do it.
all right. We'll bring that up for discussion either at the next February meeting or March meeting, because we need to make a decision on that.
I would like to know, though, when the State Board of Education does bring this up for discussion, because it would be interesting to go down and have it.
I wouldn't mind going down.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like to know when they're going to have the discussion on the chronic absenteeism portion of the test, or of the grade, because I just think it's ridiculous that they place that burden on the school system to track and to grade. That is not our responsibility. That is a parental responsibility, in my mind.
So they're coming up with that now. I know there's a group of superintendents I went down and met. So the State Department kind of comes up with it and presents it to the state board for approval. And I know there's a group of superintendents to go talk about the ELL, how that scored. We talked about how that schools that have an ELL population and the way they're graded is not consistent with how academic growth is graded. So the State Department's going to work with that, tinker with that, but, if you guys wanted to submit something formally to the State Department of Education, whether that's a resolution or something like that, or, we talked about other governmental kind of issues or agendas or things, that's something that, if you guys have ideas, Alita could work with you guys on kind of coming up with some talking points, and if y'all wanted to pass official resolutions on that, to send down to the State Department of Education to talk about why you think, if all of you are in agreement that it shouldn't be part of the report card, I think that would take great weight, and they would take that under consideration.
Well, something to consider, but I would like to know if you can find out for us or on our behalf, when the meeting is going to be where they plan to discuss this, because I would go down. I would like to go down for that.
It needs to be more precise and target specifically those students who have over a certain amount of absences, because, and I don't know that should be part of our report card, perhaps something that we just make sure that we're keeping track of, and what not policies, but what we're implementing to try to bring those back in. More of an at-risk program than making the entire system be responsible for an absentee rate that really wasn't bad. I mean, we didn't have a bad absentee rate to begin with.
Because our used to be, our goal was 95% attendance rate or 90% attendance rate, but that doesn't necessarily affect that. So the State Department is doing that now, so now I think would be a good time. But can be frustrating about having a state report card, that's not the fault of the Department of Education, it's law, is that the rules kind of change year to year, and you don't know. So what we do this spring is going to determine our next report card, and we don't even know how much the categories are going to be valued at or what the benchmarks are. It's quite ridiculous, honestly, to have a letter grade assigned to a system and you don't know what the benchmarks necessarily are. And the testing is going to change, and it's all that. But that's why a report card's ridiculous, and it's a bad law. But that said, it is, and they are trying to be a little more proactive, and they're having those discussions now. But they could go and decide next fall what previous year is going to be. And as we said, this report card just didn't have last year's data. It had the year before for our CCR rate and our graduation rate. So it's really a 2.5-year window almost, so. But yeah, I think,
Any more discussion?
I do want to add, and I know this is kind of ridiculous, but I have the benefit of having a child who just graduated last year and went through her first set of college exams. And we had, I don't know, 10, 12 kids over the house, and this had come up. And not a single one of those kids could remember whether they took exams or not. I said, was the exemption policy around when you took exams your senior year? And they all went, I don't remember. I don't remember if we did that or not. So I don't know. I know there's a lot of flurry right now, but I know a year later, they don't remember whether they took the exam or not. And that's right after taking their first set of college exams. They were all like, I don't know. So I don't think that it's killing anybody either way.
Carrie?
all right, Carrie, we'll jump back to you. You know, it seems like we've been talking about the Hazel Green Volunteer Fire Department for about
Forever.
3 years now.
Yes, sir, that's correct. We have been for quite a few years, actually, Cindy can tell you. Finally, we're back where we are, though. We're looking at trying to let them lease the property that the fire station currently sits on it, just to get it formally put under lease. We'll give them a little bit more property. What they're gonna do is they're gonna go behind the existing fire station, take it down and build a new one. And actually, they're gonna try to work with Roger Jones, I believe, also to get some, protected areas up in that same, right beside the inside of the power hall. But anyway, we'd held it for a while because they've changed the chiefs and captains in between. And they were also taking down a tennis court that we use for the elementary kids play on, that's fenced in. They replaced that tennis court and put the fencing up in another location on campus for us. So this is just a straight lease, just like we've done at Riverton Elementary School and Riverton Intermediate School we did about 2 years ago. And I just want to bring it back and see if we're ready to move on it. And the fire department lease that property.
So have we been leasing it to them all this time without an agreement?
Well, they, long
Or
before
should
we
I
were
not
born-
ask that in public?
Long before we were all born, they were, that's where they sat on that property, so it came to light several years ago, so we've been trying to work to get that legalized.
I mean, the dates in this agreement are old,
Mm-hmm.
oldish.
Ish. Their date-ish is.
All right. And is that good? Okay, we have a couple items for business that we're going to need an executive session for, I believe.
Can I just ask one more on that one? Why is it taking so long? I mean, is there some underlying issue?
Oh, no, there's no issues, it's more of, they've changed captains more so than, we wanted them to replace that tennis court before they took over any other property, and it just took them 2-3 years to get where they are. We've been waiting on them up until now, and now it's our turn.
So they wouldn't sign it until or we didn't want them to?
You didn't want to do the lease till they'd done the tennis court work.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And then they had a change in who was in
Leadership.
charge.
okay.
And they have funding issues, not mismanagement, but just lack of funding for our volunteer fire departments. So they have to do a lot of fundraising and,
But it's only $1 a year.
oh yeah, we're not charging them a whole lot, but I mean, generally
They
like
had
to,
to pay to move the tennis courts.
Oh, okay.
They pay for that, and what will happen, there's a lot of grants out there, but they have to have this lease in place, showing they have the property before they can apply for some of these grants. And that's what they did, if you know, Riverton Elementary, Riverton Intermediate, some other locations, they've done that. So that's kind of, they're ready to move, and they need this lease in place, then to be able to get some grants.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, Matt, you mentioned we need to move into executive session to cover the other business?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you
I
have?
have a certification for pending litigation.
Okay. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will be moving into executive session to discuss other business and other litigation. We will come back here to vote on that other business and to adjourn, but I do need a motion and to move into executive session at this time.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move into executive session. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of moving to executive session, say aye.
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 I would like to say that I went to the young people's concert. Susan Anderson asked me, and I went and I sat next to a little teacher from Legacy with her students. I think there were about 1,500 kids there that day. It was really awesome with the Huntsville Symphony. And you know, she just said, I wish our kids could have more of things like this. And, you know, I would say amen to that. And plus, Central got an award I think you think is an important, but, you know, perception is reality. So I'm proud of them.
Thank you, Ms. Stowe. All right.